What is going on, YouTube? I am Lamont at large. Today I am at the Rahway Cemetery here in Rahway, New Jersey, to talk about a very despicable thing that a man that used to work out here did. He was caught desecrating the graves, the very graves that he was enshrined to provide care for. He's charged with dumping trash in those very graves. We're going to talk about it right now. Before I get into the story, every time I come to this cemetery, I always visit the grave of the unknown woman. She was found dead on March 25th, 1887 here in Rahway. She was found murdered. She had defensive cuts and wounds all over her arms and her hands. Half the side of her face had been crushed in. She was a very well-dressed woman carrying a basket of eggs. She had very, very well-made foreign shoes that nobody in the area really had the money to buy. So she was not at all a poor woman or a pauper, but nobody knew who she was. And after her funeral, which was attended by estimated up to several thousand people, nobody stepped forward to say that they knew who she was. So she was simply buried. An unknown woman found dead March 25th, 1887. Her Christian name lost to the world. So let's talk about why I came to the cemetery. So in July of 2019, the man who was working here at the time, 78-year-old Eric Rickus, was the caretaker here at the cemetery. Now, this cemetery is pretty well kept, and it's a very historic cemetery. This cemetery is almost 300 years old. 300 years old. It was founded and established in 1724, and you have quite a few historic graves here. So back then, there was a lot of refuse, a lot of trash, like in and around the outskirts of the cemetery. So somebody had called and complained. I'm sure a loved one of somebody that's buried here called the health department. So the health department comes over here and they say, hey, you got to clean this up. Now, Eric Rickus, being a 78-year-old man, I don't know what kind of shape's he in. I don't know if he's even able-bodied. Maybe he could be doing the best that he can with what his bones allow him to do. So instead of, I don't know, calling a company to come out and haul out the trash, he just decides to take whatever garbage is around the area, in the outskirts of the cemetery, and just starts throwing it in the graves of somebody that was being buried here at the time. So I guess another worker seen what he was doing, and he called the police. So they talked to the person. They say, yeah, what's going on? He said, hey, this guy, all the trash in the cemetery, he's just throwing it in with the graves. Now, I believe it wasn't the grave of somebody who came here to, spend $20,000. I believe it was a grave of maybe somebody that didn't have a lot of money and maybe nobody would notice. So police got a search warrant. They came to the freshly dug grave that the worker said he's seen Rickus dumping the trash into, and they started digging and they found the trash. He was promptly arrested. He was charged with improperly disposing of debris or desecrating of a grave, one of those charges. So he was slapped on the wrist, received a fine, probation. Don't ever do that again. What are you gonna do to a 78-year-old man? What are you gonna do, throw him in prison? No, he did something in poor taste, and he did something bad. I'm sure he's not a terrible person, but when you do stuff like that, it doesn't really show you're a good person either. And a lot of times we entrust cemeteries and funeral homes with the care of our loved ones after they are no longer with us. And just a bad thing he did. Now, as I was saying earlier, this cemetery is practically 300 years old. And there's some very historic graves. You have about 29 graves of the first black soldiers that were allowed to fight in the Civil War. And, you know, it's amazing that there were people that were saying, like, yeah, we shouldn't allow them to fight. I mean, what better man to fight for his own freedom than a black man? So you have some of those here. You have a few hundred Civil War soldiers. You have 75 some odd graves of soldiers that fought in the Revolutionary War. So there is a lot of history here at the Rahway Cemetery. In this crypt right here lies the body of a man who saved countless people's lives and limbs, and that is Dr. Frederick Albee. He invented the procedure known as bone grafting. He saved a lot of men's legs and arms who got terrible injuries from World War I. Bone grafting basically is, you know, if a bone receives considerable damage, you know, oftentimes if you make like little fractures in the bone, it'll heal itself. But the art of bone grafting would be basically you're going to take bone from the person, whichever part of the body the surgeon chooses, or oftentimes they'll use cadaver bone. There's also other artificial substances that act like bone that they use. So it's because of this man's innovations in medical science that he gave life to many young men who would have gone through life, you know, hobbling around on one leg. And we know back in those days, you know, if you're a 20-year-old man coming from France or Germany or whatever, and you're missing a leg, it would have been very tough for you to make a life for yourself. You know, meet a girl, start a family, all that stuff. People don't think about that. So God rest his soul, Dr. Frederick Albee, for giving new life to people who would have faced a certain amputation. I noticed this tomb right here. Somebody knocked out the bricks, and I wanted to see what was in there, so I went to my van to get my light. I don't see any names, and there's none on the other side. I don't know what people were expecting, but let's see inside. And that looks like to be some kind of, I can't tell if those are bones, but it looks like ash. So I don't know if they did some kind of mass cremation. You can see a couple bones right there. I don't know if you can see it. I'll try to mark it on the video if you guys can't see it. I see a couple, looks like leg bones, and there's a bone right there. You guys might be able to see better on the video. But I would say there was some kind of fire in here at one point in time. I don't know if this was somebody tried to do some kind of cremation, or some stupid kids came in here and set fire to this thing. But yeah, there's no names of the dead that are interred here. You don't see oftentimes on the East Coast tombs that are designed like this. You see more of this in the South. I went to McDonald's today to get a sausage McMuffin, no egg, no cheese, and they gave me a biscuit. Now, I ate 2/3 of it, but I don't really like their biscuits. I see a squirrel up there. There you are. Hey, do you want this? I'm just gonna toss it here. Well, I'll toss a piece of it here, and then they'll find it later. And then you can have at it. Now, no fighting. I know there's not often times that you find a sausage biscuit bacon and cheese. It would have been nice if they threw a piece of sausage on there at least, you know, when they gave me the wrong order. But I always leave food at the bases of the base, or bases, whatever you want to call it, of trees. So that way the squirrels can find a little treat. You know, I'm sure as a squirrel you probably get tired of nuts and, you know, whatever else that you might find at a cemetery. It's got to be kind of a rough life for a squirrel sometimes, especially when it gets cold. I can't imagine. So they're probably eating as much as they can to get nice and fat for the winter. And I didn't notice earlier, but someone had left some bags of chips at Dr. Alby's mausoleum. So I went ahead. Here, I'll leave this by the trash can. I'm pretty sure they always go into the trash to look for food. And seen these bags, so I went ahead and opened them up. And I didn't mention earlier, but he's the only one buried in here. The glass right here is broken. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, you can see it right there. But yeah, he's the only one there. He's right there. And all alone, he's got the whole place to himself. I'm not sure where his wife is, or possibly his family's in there and they didn't want any markers on their final resting place. The front of the cemetery right here is going to have the oldest graves in this whole cemetery. All these markers right here, very, very old. They're over 200 years old. Check this out. Here lies interred the body of Mr. Richard Nicholas, who departed this life February the 27th, 1786, aged 66 years. I'm not sure what these markers are made of, but they definitely have stood the test of time. But then you're going to have markers like this, oftentimes made of some kind of like a porous material, like a limestone or something like that. And it would be very, very difficult to read what it says. You can say his name is John Morris, and then everything else is very, very difficult to read. Also, you're going to have a lot of soldiers who died in the Revolutionary War buried in the front right there. And oftentimes they're not going to have a marker. Sometimes, you know, if you were in battle and 10 people died, if a cannon blew up a bunker where they were lying in, they would just all bury them in one grave and maybe put like a wooden cross. Maybe they didn't know exactly what their names were, and then that would be it. It's quite amazing, all these lives that I've lived. Oh, so here's the grave of, this is Abraham Clark. He was one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. He was a lawyer here in Jersey, and he was, I believe, he was voted to go down there to sign the document. And this is Captain Thomas Clark, son of Abraham Clark. Fought at the Battle of Princeton, served in the Revolutionary War from 1776 to 1781. He died in the 37th year of his life. Abraham also had another son who fought in the Civil War. I think his son died aboard a British ship after they captured him. And of course right here, this is the graves of Abraham Clark and his wife Sarah. quite amazing that through all the storms, all the riffraff that would come into this cemetery, I'm amazed that half these markers are not toppled over. My husband, William W. Martin, born December 18th, 1837, died October 16th, 1865. As a beloved pastor, he performed 2 years of earnest, suggestful labor, and in his dying words enforced the lesson of his brief, happy, useful life. John Tremblay, 1834 to 1907, Union and Confederate veteran of the Civil War. Prior to the Civil War, Mr. Tremblay worked at the Dunham Carriage Factory in Rahway. By 1860, he had transferred to Georgia and was drafted into the Confederate Army. Upon the onset of hostilities, early in 1862, Mr. Tremblay deserted through the lines and enlisted in the Union Army, Company D, 10th Tennessee Volunteer Infantry, serving until his discharge in June 1865. Quite interesting. Thank you for your service, sir. Look at this. The only flag I fly. I don't know about that other one. You guys fly whatever flags you want to fly. That's my flag. Back in those days, in the olden days, 1 out of 5 children died, I want to say before the age of 5. So it is unfortunately, it was not uncommon to have a funeral for a child or even several children. Okay, guys, I am out of here. This video turned out a little longer than I thought. I was just going to come here to just talk about the story of what happened. And then as I was looking up the cemetery, I said, let's take a walk around and see some other things in this place. And I'm glad that I did. I got to get going. I got to head up to Newark. I believe that's how you pronounce it. Is it Newark or Newark? There's different pronunciations. I probably pronounced it wrong. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching my video. I am out of here. I will see you on the next vlog. Be good, y'all. Peace out.